If you guys want to go ahead and kind of introduce yourself, starting with Kalamazi. Is that saying your name right, by the way?
Dude, it is. It is.
Okay, I used to call. I've been
I
so
know.
like stun locked by your name because I called you something different, but then I started calling you it again because I thought it was the other one that you told me it wasn't. I called you Kalamazai or
I mean,
something.
I've known you for like 2 years. I hugged you during the first win,
Yeah,
like, years
yeah,
ago. We hung out in Boston, like, it's okay.
yeah. Okay, you're making me feel bad, but that's okay. Okay, yeah, no, I need to. I also need to. Chat is reminding me that I need to update your all's names. I also think Trill's
Hey,
gonna be
how's it
here. He said
going,
he's gonna be here,
Raven?
but I know they got done playing not too long ago, but that's fine. All right,
Good.
Goop, tell the stream about you.
Huh? Hello. What's up?
All right, that's him. And then we have Preheat here as well.
Hello, I'm Preheat. I'm the Wowhead Guide Writer for Fire and Frost Mage, and I play a lot of Evoker, and I plan to play a lot of it too.
Let's go. All right, I need to turn Goop up too. You're super
Now,
quiet.
I'm the guy who hugged Max multiple times, and yeah, name's pronounced Kalamazi, but
All right, so we're gonna talk about the spec tree. We already have covered a lot of like the class-based stuff, so we will kind of go through a tree here. I've actually played a bit more of Devastation, so I'll have a lot more input, but I know you guys have all as well, and that'll probably see itself a lot more in the actual spec tree for sure, because that's like where it's very interesting to see where they want to go with a few of these builds. Currently, it seems like they have blue kind of being like a really single target oriented build, but also living flame just does way too much damage. So it's like, yeah, the red doesn't really feel right. Firestorm should be like an insane AoE talent. It's not really that strong. You know, the fire breath extending feels weird and bad, and empower abilities are pretty problematic. All that stuff. We'll get there. Just for now, let's go through the class tree right after you guys kind of give your initial impressions on playing the spec and all the tools it has available. Anyone can go.
The playstyle, it seems like, for red and blue, both super solid in AoE, single target, everything else. Initially, like, we were playing around with it. We were trying to get a feel for what the tuning would be like, even though it's like pretty early. And I'd say the tuning seems pretty good. You can also play like kind of hybrid builds, kind of spanning the gap between blue and red, especially with like Ever-Burning Flame. It's weird to extend that in like AoE, and it feels a lot like Fire Mage in a lot of situations where you're like, I just want to get my dot out and enemies aren't living long enough. But I will say that a lot of these like blue traits kind of feel like they almost are meant to work with these red traits as well. So I feel like the intention is almost that you can just kind of play whatever, and it seems like they've kind of pulled that off. So really good first
Yeah,
impression from all this.
cool.
yeah, I feel like after playing both, we played a bit of a hybrid build. We were running some dungeons like I think Zero Shadow and stuff a bit ago together. Like I feel like there's potential there with the fire build, but like Max said, like Firestorm and Snapfire just feel underwhelming.
Yeah.
And like there's a couple of talents with fire, being Feed the Flames and Leaping Flames, which are well, yeah, they're just not working. They're just bugged. Which like sort of devalues Fire's AoE profile. Um, but yeah, like he touched a bit on Ever Burning Flame. Like that's it seems odd. Like fire seems like it's more suited around this like sustained heavy AoE profile where like packs live for a long time. Sort of how like Destro is, right? Where like a Destro lock is not gonna run into a pack and burst to a million DPS like a Windwalker or a Survival Hunter, right? But if things live for a while, their damage ramps, and that's where their synergy grows, right? Blue is more of like a, at least to me, sort of feels like a you can go in and just blast things down quickly with like Eternity Surges and Charge Bolts cleaving. Um, yeah, like I think they're both similar and different, both good in single target at times, but just have like these sort of like different filler roles they fill. I don't know. That's sort of how I
Yeah,
feel about it, at least.
yeah, no, we'll definitely get into the spec tree a
Yeah.
little bit more. Let's talk about so how we're gonna do the class tree is we're gonna just go down and make sure that we have all the stuff that's like basically required for playing the game properly and having just like leave out some of the optional stuff, take as much as we need of very obvious things that you have to go forward, and then we will move on from that and then talk about the option nodes we have in like most environments. So at the beginning we're going to focus primarily as like a raid range DPS, not Mythic Plus as much for the class tree. So obviously, I don't know if anyone wants specifically to walk me down, but it is. I'm also a little bit, well, like at the beginning, you're basically required to just like you're getting the slow, you're getting the living flame, you're getting disintegrate, you're getting essence, and then now what? You need like one more point to move on. Everything here is optional, right? Technically, including your kick, although you're obviously going to get the magic damage node under it. So anyone from here wants to take it, that is just fine. And obviously,
I
we'll talk
don't.
about stuff we could take up here again.
I don't think you're required to take the slow at all. I actually think you'd rather take uh, something else most of
Oh,
the time.
correct. Yeah, no. The slow is just because in most builds I end up like teching into the lower cooldown personal, and that's like required to get to that point, right? And also, don't you need that to get the living flame damage as well?
I think I'd rather
Have rescue.
take rescue. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's something where I think, especially with it not being a like throughput button, something you'd probably do later in the tree, and something you do that. So for now, I think as long as you're not going to commit two things for the poison dispel just to get rescue. I mean, rescue is fucking insane. I don't disagree with you, but
Yeah.
we'll talk about swapping that later when we see how
Rescue
many
is
points we
very,
have.
very good.
So moving on down from just this as a base, like to try not to think of this as like I already have this fully worked out in my head and I'm looking at my tree. Think of like every decision you're making in the moment, and then we'll get down, take all the obvious and good decisions that you would have for like raid, and then you'd go up here and be like, you know what? On most fights, this personal especially is like really, really weak, and you have like a really strong personal down here. Like you'd actually just prefer to have rescue on so many encounters that you would just take the slow, not consider the movement reduction, and then you just add the point somewhere else. So that's fine. So tip the scales and magic damage done increase. Preheat, where are we going from here?
Yeah, so those are both basically, you're going to take those for sure. From there, I mean, so if you like your healers, you can take Source of Magic. Depends on how you feel about them. But I like taking that one because Fly With Me is fantastic. It's probably like the best ability they've ever added to this game. But I did want to like double back on one that we kind of skipped over that I feel like is so insane that we have to talk about. So Cauterizing Flame is probably one of the most goated talents ever. It's literally a 1 minute cooldown, and it's a Kyrian pot that you can do on an ally. And like that's just so insane to have as a DPS, I feel like.
Correct. The only reason I didn't do it right away is that there are definitely going to be fights where this has zero use, and it's probably a tech pick that you do later, although it has an extremely high power level. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyways, going down from there, I mean, on the same row, we obviously have like the Fire Breath's instant damage increase, which is probably pretty good. Protracted. Go ahead.
Before we talk about anything else, you mentioned Source of Magic. So when like talking about a raid build, it's kind of hard to tell how many Evokers are going to be in the raid right now. I actually don't think there's going to be many classes in this game that are stacked, especially knowing that like last expansion you had outside of raid buffs like 13 to 12 classes if there was a DK grip on a fight that were basically you could fill in based on the power level of every class currently outside of required things. Now that number is down to like kind of like 8 and 7 and potentially even less when more class trees get released. So I don't know how often stacking is going to be. The reason why I'm saying this is unless you're having a ton of evokers, I'm pretty sure you're always taking Source of Magic. Currently, its power level is like very high, much higher for healers than DPS, by the way. Especially if you're only playing red build, it's a little bit better as blue build. But this is definitely like insanely fucking good. But we can actually leave it for now. I actually agree with that thought process. I think also if you guys have played it, I mean, hover lasting 4 seconds longer is like
that's a
money
take
back
that
guarantee requirement.
Yep.
Yeah,
Hover is so broken, man.
Also, in dungeons especially, that Fly With Me talent below the Twin Guardian, absolutely insane. Like the biggest absorb shields.
Oh yeah,
Such a
see
fantastic button.
that's why like initially when I had an issue with their main personal kind of sucking really bad, I was thinking that like even in the worst case scenario, renewing Blaze, even as a 1 point being a 1.5 and not reducing it is so strong. But then also the fact that you could use Fly With Me and the Twin Guardian point is just a 1 minute personal even just for yourself, and that's like enough to deal with like a lot of things in raid fights. But you mentioned that you would go down to get Source of Magic just to get to this. Assuming that you want the tech into getting renewing Blaze, you would probably just grab Ancient Flame. Yeah. So then now we need another, before we start teching out our last points, we need another 4 points to continue down the tree. And there's a lot of options for this, right? So obviously 3 of those 4 points could be just grabbing Source of Magic, grabbing extra health. That could be pretty fight specific. On a kick encounter where you're grabbing Quell, where you're like quelling every 20 seconds to get an essence, that'll have like decently high value, one of the few throughput value options you can have in the tree. Obviously Cauterizing Flame, obviously Rescue. and then also repathing this and getting rid of the slow or teching into the slower personal. One thing I did want to point out that did feel bad in other trees and does in this tree as well is I feel like recall.
By the way, Chad, I'm watching
is
Max's
never,
stream
ever going to get
because he's
selected.
talking about the screen right now. So
you would just play
not
around
really-
that.
really
and
reading
I
the chat.
wonder if they could maybe make this big.
I'll try and read it more, though.
You just never.
You guys
every,
have questions
like,
for me?
Like every point you could choose right now is actually cracked, and this is just like whatever. So I would like to have that just be baseline on breath because it would just make the gameplay feel a little bit better because you won't select it.
It also just feels kind of slow to use.
Yeah,
I'd rather just walk.
Yeah.
I think that trade is cringe because it's a whole GCD you have to wait afterwards. Like, I don't know why it isn't off the GCD. And I think until they like put it back on the GCD, I would only choose it in situations where like I'd really want to, like where I'd feel really dangerous going in like that.
Okay.
But
Good.
I just like more often than not you can play your actual like deep breath. We don't really need recall more often than not. But that's it.
Yeah. So we do have to just select something here. Rescue's like pretty fucking crazy. So I'm thinking maybe for now we just do expunge, rescue, get rid of permeating chill, and then we still have the 3 points to spend. And I think we just put that directly into tempered scale and source of magic. So now we have the bottom thing unlocked with the exact things and still have some points we can tech out later over here. This is actually interesting. So the only like technical damage option on the way down outside of a very niche situation where Unravel is like very strong and just very rare in PvE. This is like the damage option, but this is also just very good tech. So like basically on any, this is like raid situation, probably not of a lot of Azure Strike value, where it's damaging an additional enemy and you can certainly select it, but I think it's just a choice node between these two things. You're going to grab Fly with me, right? I think you hold on Twin Guardian for now, grab the Hover additional charge, and now Leaping Flames is a guarantee. So we were talking about this a little earlier too. So even in a scenario where another technical option you can get for damage is if you're doing like a single target fight, and you cast this. Currently, this like tooltip doesn't work properly for people who are watching. It doesn't. You have to cast it directly after Fire Breath to get it to work every time, I believe. And instead of it just being like a buff for 20 seconds, that just makes it so the next Living Flame you cast or just have it being part of your built-in kit. So it doesn't work quite properly according to the tooltip. But if you hit one boss and there aren't other classes around them, or there aren't like other mobs around them, it will heal with the other
oh, that's cool.
Empower levels, which is interesting because if you look at Scarlet Adaptation, it also technically gives you damage in that way as well. So this is like an extra point to think about later. But Goop, where would you go from here? Just on a generic raid build, what are the things you're considering?
Generic raid build? I mean, if there's not really anything for damage, you're just gonna go into these like utility choices. Like you can take the shielding on yourself on Twin Guardian so that you can get down to that party cooldown, or you could take Scarlet Adaptation up top, like you said. I think Renewing Blaze is just really powerful.
I think you need Renewing Blaze. Like I think in all of our conversations I've had, Renewing Blaze seems like a tech pick, and I guess technically there is fights where it's really not that dangerous for you, but I mean this is just one of the very best like personal cooldowns in the game that isn't a damage reduction, and your damage reduction cooldown kind of stinks. So I think this is like a guarantee.
I mean anything that isn't going to kill you is just completely negated by this, right? That's kind of broken.
Yeah.
I guess theoretically that's true, yeah.
What's up?
No, I didn't think about it like that. I guess essentially what he said, anything that's not going to kill you is essentially negated by this. It's a, 14-second duration? I mean, I guess sort of, yeah. It depends a bit. It's like that actual heal comes over 14 seconds. It's
so
like
I'm
staggered.
Yeah, I'm a little biased against it just because it seems like just a worse alter time to me. But I mean, alter time is extremely strong, so.
I mean, alter time is better ability than like almost any in the class in the game has. Even if you don't even count the movement thing, just healing. But like if you just look at this at a 1.5 minute cooldown, so let's just picture you pop this and then you go from 100% to 1%. You take exactly 99% of your damage. Just to like visualize it, you would be just over 50% of your health at the end of that 8 seconds from the hot, and then 6 seconds after this is off of you, you would just be healing for up to 90%, right? Or up to 100% again. So like it's not like it's super delayed. Like you're getting basically half the value within the time you're taking it. It's extremely powerful. What is it? So how do you guys feel about Time Spiral? We talked about this a little bit with other classes, but I actually wonder if you guys have thought about this ability a lot.
Yeah, so Time Spiral definitely seems like really nice for solo play, even because if you like hover twice and use it again, hover just like rolls the duration that you get castle moving into like a big duration, which is really nice. So I like it just for personal play, but I think for the group, I mean, I could see situations where like it could be, you know, useful in like a raid setting, but it's also like movement, right? So you can just kind of play around movement in most cases. But I mean, there's definitely going to be cases where you want that, I think.
What do you guys think about Time
I think it's,
Spiral
I think it, oh, Time Spiral, which
specifically?
is
Yeah,
my game just crashed. What does Time Spiral do again? I know the names, I know the abilities. But I don't.
yeah, it's a 2-minute cooldown that allows your entire raid to use an extra major movement ability
Oh,
one time.
got it. I was looking at Zephyr. I don't know. I think it's okay. I think it's pretty situational. Like
Yeah.
at times it can be pretty wild, but I don't think like I feel like I don't want to get too far into like general evoker stuff. I feel like some of their like raid utilities been a bit overvalued. Personally, I think Time Spiral is sort of one of those. It's fine. It can be situationally pretty good, but I feel like more often than not, it might be just a bit overvalued.
Yeah, and also for Warlock, it's literally just your demonic circle, so
Yeah, well, it's better for some classes and worse for others. But I mean,
yeah.
like
Yeah, so I have a list actually. Yeah, so like basically classes it's good for is getting an extra stack of horse for a paladin is nuts. Getting an extra fell rush for a DH outside of momentum is kind of whatever. Druid getting an extra use of dash could be good. Blink and shimmer obviously good. Roll good. Leap of faith actually, even though they don't have a movement skill, it's actually like pretty solid that you could grip someone 2 times in 10 seconds. You could potentially do something with that. Sprints, whatever. Shamans actually get Spirit Walker's Grace, Resto, and
Yeah,
Elemental.
that's insane.
So like being able to give your healers and DPS the ability to DPS while moving as an on use is very strong. Personal point, literally irrelevant. Death's Advance depends on the fight. Again, Heroic Leap, irrelevant. Aspect of the Cheetah, good. So that's like half and half good. But then I just want to like kind of, this is what I was thinking about earlier, man. Hover is so fucking unbelievable.
Yeah.
That, and I'm pretty sure the only thing that even comes close to it in the entire game is actually Shimmer. But dude, even just using this on a 2-minute cooldown to allow yourself in a pinch to give you yourself and no one else an extra hover is good.
Yeah. Also,
that.
to like add on to that, imagine this ability on a fight like Zymox back in Castle Natria, right? Like if you had one of those for every bomb set, it would just, there's just so much more freedom in like getting that stuff done. So
yeah, that's a really good, that's a really good example.
We're also like losing Soul Shape and we're losing Door of Shadows as well. So I feel like people might be undervaluing their own mobility right now just a little bit because it's a little carried by the Covenant abilities. So just another thing to think about.
Yeah, also something that makes movement matter a little bit less is the fact that they gave shamans more raid buffs, making them more prevalent and potentially available in raids for win rushes. And the fact that now every druid that you saw last expansion that brought roar now can bring twice as many roars per druid. So that's like speed will matter a little bit less. But I really doubt like there's going to be scenarios where you like time spiral to do a specific mechanic. But I really think even as a personal, this is like a very, very powerful ability to consider. And I would probably select it most times. So I'm just going to go ahead and select that. Again, we're talking about raid. I think you're just going to make use of it. So now we are down to 3 points. What do you guys think are the strongest considerations for these points in a raid environment?
It's just all situational.
Yeah,
right? Like, cauterizing flame. If there's a bleed, a 1-minute bleed dispels like so. There's just nothing else like that, right? It's the only thing that can do that other than Bop, which is a 5-minute cooldown, I think.
Mm-hmm. And there's very few classes too that aren't healers that can do anything close to this too.
I also think you lock in Tailwind to the left of it as well because
really,
yeah, because the movement speed you get from that is really, really nice. It almost makes into it like a dash as well, like a really, really strong dash. So I'm a big fan of this talent, and especially if you're taking Time Anomaly or whatever it's called at the very bottom, which I like that button so much that I'm always going to keep it so I can press it, or Time Spiral is what I meant. So yeah, that just gives me like way more mobility.
Dude, I really think you're going like you'd have to like see Warcraft logs or whatever, but like I feel like Scarlet Adaptation might increase your damage done in a single target scenario by like maybe like 1% or something. And if that's true, like people are just going to take this, but we'll kind of just leave that for now. Just now knowing the interaction with Leaping Flames. But yeah, just to kind of go over some of the options that you have to choose. Unravel. Imagine Unravel as tech on like Sun King.
Yeah,
right? Like
or the sausage, right? Especially
it's
like
actually huge.
If
it's
you can
really, really good.
Like, I think the shield on Sun King was 6 seconds, right? The 6-second cast. But like
think it was, yeah.
anytime, if it's like a 10-second shield, you have a 9-second cooldown here. It's going to hit for 500% of your spell power coefficient. That's insane. And the fact that like, well, I don't know, they'd probably talent into it just for this one fight, but like healers would probably take it too, right? Because the damage is just way too high.
It's very, yeah, it's extremely powerful, and it's like not out of your way to get it. That's something this tree has done so well, is it presents every single option with your default build, both in Resto and like the DPS version of this, where you are able to get basically whatever you want and you don't have to go to it. Like Cauterizing Flame, you're probably going to have on most raid fights. I agree, but then 1 point away from that is like basically like a permanent CC if you need it, or Scarlet Adaptation, or a shorter cooldown renewing Blaze based on the fight. Right. Something that I feel like I don't like that you don't take right now. If you're just talking about tech, the only like real criticism I have, and I don't think it's that big, is the healing done and healing received node is in the way of getting Bountiful Bloom. And I feel like Bountiful Bloom as a DPS evoker actually is like pretty fucking good tech for like off healing on some fights. Like that ability is good.
Yeah.
Yeah, Emerald Blossom. Like that is like one of the better off healing abilities, single GC things that I think is it the singular best one of like any like hybrid ranged like healer guy?
It probably is. I don't think what else would even be better.
It's literally just wild growth without any downsides. And we were using it like in dungeons, and it's hilarious with all evokers. Everyone just drops it, hold 5 people, just boom, lay on hands.
Yeah, and again, still, if you like took that, you could tech it into like, if it was in a better spot in the tree, I really doubt you'll ever take this because of the points required to get it. But like, it would also just like feed into Scarlet Adaptation's value as well, which you don't even have to think about. It would just give you damage.
There's enough points to take it sometimes. Like we have a lot of stuff that
there could be
selected that we could just unselect to take it.
Mm-hmm.
Like what if you don't need that healer mana thing? I forget the name. Like, what if you don't need the reduced magic damage taken? Like, that's 3 points. There's plenty of like really good stuff, but it's not 100% necessary in every type of fight where you could easily just tech into stronger off healing.
Yeah, also like if you end up not needing certain abilities for a certain raid encounter, just picking up the Draconic Legacy, those 2 points, it's just 4% more health, so that's pretty good.
Oh, yeah. And being able to just add health. Like, there won't be a lot of fights like that. Like, imagine you're, like, progressing Castle Nathria, right? And you're doing, like, Council, doesn't really matter. Like, it's a hard healing fight, but it doesn't really matter. Same thing with Zymox and Nerva. But then you get to Sludge Fist, and it's like, okay, like, 4 times in this fight, everyone in the raid gets hit to, like, some number between, like, dead or 10%. So, like, every bit of health is noticeably better. It's very fight techy kind of situation. But overall, I think this tree is one of the more well-made trees that they've done, specifically class, because they have it easy for every spec to get their throughput options. And then they basically just leave you a variety of points to tech out into exactly what you want, and you don't feel forced into taking any of it. There are a lot of specs that exist currently. If you look at this calculator where they spend basically, I mean, I'll use DKs for example. It's getting reworked a little bit, but I don't think this problem is going to be solved, where they basically are spending like every single point on throughput in this tree, and they're trying to get as much as they can on the way, and there's some abilities they might never pick because there's just too much good shit. I feel like some of the better trees, and as your all's main classes, I think every single one of your main classes except for Goops has actually not been released yet, where you'll see that, you know, I think as they're being made more, they're much more mindful of that. So it's really good.
It also seems to me a difference between like hybrid tree versus like a pure DPS tree. They just put a lot more DPS in like a hunter or like probably a mage in their general tree than you're ever going to be able to put in a tree that has 2-3 roles. Druid 4 roles, right?
Definitely. But I think it's something they should try to emulate. In fact, you mentioned hunters, right? Like hunters, the hunter guy actually did that, and it may not have even been his choice, because as with every single person who's making these trees, sometimes your player base is totally different than other player bases, right? Like some people are the class designer for shaman, and then someone's a hunter. But it turns out that shaman doesn't have, like hunter has, hundreds of thousands of people who probably never step into a raid, and all they care about are these nodes where their pet heals for more and can be dispelled and takes less damage, and they can just do solo content they've never done before. It's like the hunter tree actually has almost the entire first 2 parts of the tree is just tech for like things that aren't damage related whatsoever, and all the damage at the bottom to make up for that. But I think you bring up a really strong point where it is much easier to have this happen in your design process when making something like making something like a class that has 3 DPS slots. I just think it's something that, especially these people that are coming out soon for Mage and Warlock, are really mindful of that they don't make you spend your entire class tree into getting damage. And the Evoker tree is a perfect example of this. All right, so moving on. That I was gonna say we don't even really need to talk about it, but I was gonna say we could like build this tree for Mythic Plus too. Um, but it's kind of the same shit. Like you
So
don't.
situational still too, right?
It's all just 5 points at the end being situational to fill a
Yeah.
specific niche, and they have extremely strong uh party synergy. So yeah, I
It's a
mean
good
they're
thing. I think it's like a good example of like a tree being just like built properly, like in a good way. Like you have those floater traits, but you hit on what you need mostly, right? You have like fly with me, you have like your twin guardian baseline, but you have the option of taking like cauterizing flame or other ones in certain dungeons. It's solid. Like I agree. The tree's really well rounded. I've it's been fun to mess with.
Yeah, I think also, I don't know if this has been mentioned yet, but like overall, which is below Oppressing Roar, is just going to be like you pick that in Raging Weeks, like non-negotiable, I'm pretty sure.
There's
Mm.
also supposed to be some dungeons that have enrages in as well. And one thing we talked about this during the healer tree, is it also just like is going to have a really short cooldown too by interacting with things that are actually being enraged. Not to mention that I mean we didn't really talk about oppressing roar, but that is
It's insane.
definitely fucking insane. Like
Imagine that like on Anduin, like add CC. Like
Yeah.
isn't that like massive there, right? Like
yeah, the thing that I think of with this, which probably might get it nerfed, is that like I'm thinking of like PvP and someone being in an 8-second kidney shot, but the but like outside we never talk about PvP on my stream because I just don't really care about it much. But like in PvE, even just on a 2-minute cooldown to make your initial stun on the pull last 50% longer is very good. So like yeah, this is a definitely an underrated ability. Oh, is it a 12-second kidney or no? No, it's 9-second, right? It's not double the duration. It's 50% more. Yeah, 9.
It can be 10.5 actually.
Oh, what's up,
Jeez.
Trill? So Trill just joined. Everyone knows who you are, so probably no need to introduce yourself. Yeah, actually, that's a quick. Have you thought about this class in PvP at all? Not to like give like a huge tangent, but like, like what do you think about its power level now that you've played around with it a bit?
Uh, the 25-year range is probably gonna be the biggest
Yeah.
like hurdle, I guess you could say. Like especially for healing. Like obviously healers want to be very far away most of the time, and I mean there are definitely some really insane uh things that I'd say about it. Like for example, obviously your pressing roar is gonna be crazy, but um there's a PvP talent that makes you immune to all
Oh,
like
time
silence
stop.
and interrupts
Yep.
when you pop into obsidian scales. And then yeah, obviously time stop. But chrono loop's like an almost like an NS cyclone. Like if you have no more CC, you just chrono loop somebody, and then you know if you weren't gonna kill them anyway, and then you can like continue the CC chain and get a kill
So you
that way.
think
Like
like 25-yard range probably won't affect DPS Evoker in arena nearly as much as
yeah,
healing
I think
will.
the healing will be very weird with only 25-yard range.
I think they'll look at that though because I think that's like something we haven't played a lot with it in PvP, but it's something that could be weird. But anyways, we're gonna move on to the spec tree. So this is a tree that I think is a little problematic. I like the way that it's spread out into like blue and red almost down the middle. A very good cooldown. We didn't get a chance to talk about Dragon Rage earlier, but it's actually one of my favorite cooldowns in the entire game. I feel like it perfectly uh captures the thing that they tried to do 2 years ago where they wanted every single cooldown to be on the GCD, but it just felt terrible because none of them really did enough to make sense of it. And Dragon Rage does it perfectly, right? So it is on the GCD, but it doesn't feel bad because you just lob pyres at 3 enemies and it's just
Hmm.
like, okay, you're popping off. So it on the GCD is totally fine. Um, and yeah, I think that's really cool. I think the capstone nodes are definitely interesting. The right two are definitely, in my opinion, much better than the left one, at least in terms of design. But yeah, you guys can kind of just as a group, if you want, kind of take me down the build. For now, let's talk about.
Can I talk about Dragon Rage actually?
Yeah,
Like
actually, go for it.
I think it actually feels really underwhelming on single target, and especially if you don't take Azure
Ruin.
Essence Burst. Well, Ruin, yeah, too. But if you don't take Azure Essence Burst, you don't really have a great way of like procking it. You have to like hard cast or Living Flame to actually
yeah.
proc the Essence Burst. So you kind of need that talent to even get much value out of it at all. Otherwise, it's just a few instant pyres and that's it.
It seems really odd, like, even, like, if I'm playing, like, more of a fire build, like an AoE, and I pop Dragon's Rage, like, I know that, like, both the cleave talents for Living Flame aren't working right now, but it feels like when I'm casting a Living Flame in, like, heavy AoE under a Dragon's Rage, like, to get those instant cast pyre procs, I'd rather just be throwing Edge Strikes, like, instant cast and the instant cast. I'm losing so much value, like, by just losing, like, multiple pyres through that rage cast, you know? I agree, it feels really awkward in certain scenarios.
Yeah, I think in
It's
Dragon Rage,
almost useless in single target. Like
I think in Dragon Rage you're pretty much just clawing with that talent. Like it just feels like how you got to play it. But I will say with the Ruin talent, it's kind of further on. But like having that mastery be full effect while you have the cooldown up, I could definitely see situations where like depending on the build, and we'll talk more about this once we like talk about red, like deep red stuff. But I could see you using it just for the mastery effects, like especially when the boss is like lower, and then you know, doing like your normal DPS rotation that may not even necessarily depend on getting essence return.
Definitely,
Which is
and
kinda
I
weird.
think I do really like the idea of Ruin, and honestly, if Ruin didn't exist, the mastery for this class would feel really bad.
Yeah.
And I guess we can kind of talk about the mastery. I think it's gonna potentially be like one of the hardest things to understand how good a class is in the entire game, because I mean their mastery is absolute sim bait. Because every person that like like makes a decision on like what a class is good, almost all of them just look at 5 minute single target sims. Obviously, it's a big problem, but that's definitely what happens. And this class is always going to sim better than it's going to do at like a later stage in the fight. Uh, just in terms of like fights where outside of the niche thing like Sylvanas, where having that mastery at the beginning is actually like on any hard mythic boss is not really relevant, even though it makes you good for target switching. What do you guys think about the mastery?
I think it's fine because Ruin exists. I think, well, not just Ruin, but the capstone below it, Tyranny, just basically kindling for this class. You can already get this 2 minute cooldown with like no haste on these template characters down to like a minute 20, a minute 15. Like imagine in a raid scenario where you have gear, where you have haste, which I think this class needs a lot. I don't know if you guys agree, but haste
I think so.
Yeah,
I
the
think
haste makes it feel really
is going to
good.
be the number one stat to stack. You're getting this down to a minute already with haste, I think potentially even lower. And it lasts 20 seconds. Like, I don't think mastery is going to be that bad at all.
Oh,
Okay.
Goop, to add on to that, one of the talents that's kind of key to this conversation as well isn't working right now. Feed the Flames is the one that gives cooldown reduction on Fire Breath. And since Fire Breath has cooldown reduction on your main ability, once that's working, it's going to be even better.
Definitely. What is the other thing I wanted to ask as well? Actually, no. Let's just go into who wants to take me down if you were to just focus. So there's obviously like a lot of hybrid builds right now. There's also a full blue and a full red. We can kind of talk about the abilities as we get through them. One thing that was definitely very noticeable, and we will talk about this too in the healer tree, is how weird the empowers feel. The fact that you can't cast them all hover, the
Yeah.
fact that they are not made faster by haste, the fact that to get a level 1 you can't just like tap it, and also that they're kind of boring across the entire class. Like especially it's something like Eternity Surge, right? Like just holding it longer to deal damage to more enemies, like that doesn't feel awesome at all. Like I feel like they could kind of rework their whole philosophy around like how Empower is going to work for this class.
It also sort of feels weird, like, I don't wanna get too far, like, off course,
No, you're fine. This
but,
is very informal.
like with Eternity Surge, like whether you take like the fourth tier of empowered, like hitting 1 to 4 enemies, like there's that weird middle ground where it's like the power swell talent, the one that gives you 50% increased essence regen. There's that weird like middle ground where like if you're in single target, I mean both I think both Preheat and I have like sort of sort of discovered you still want to fully empower that in single target, but like you're not getting any kind of damage increase. It's just a 6 second extension of your power swell buff.
Oh, just because of Power
Oh,
Swell? That's really lame.
can I go into
Yeah.
like a big rant about Power Swell? Because I feel like this is important for this. Any
Sure.
ability,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
yeah. So any ability that takes, or so I feel like Power Swell is one of those talents where you're probably going to take it regardless of whatever build, because there's no real way that's reliable to speed up your essence regeneration aside from this one talent. You may have like one-off things like, oh, you interrupt, or like, oh, it returns on, on cast.
Right.
But This is we can kind of assume at this point that the design is probably like your damage at the end of the fight is a factor of how much empower you or how much essence you used, right? So this heavily incentivizes, like Kalamazi is saying, fully charging your empower abilities, but it also heavily incentivizes talents like Fauna Magic to increase your empower level, and also spells like Eternity Surge, which is just another way to generate power swell, and obviously like Tyranny, which we were already talking about, which you get from like fully charging up. And I think something like Tyranny giving you cooldown reduction and like incentivizing fully charging all the time is fine because that's like a capstone. And that totally makes sense for it to impact the gameplay. But I feel like having Power Swell as like a staple may be incentivizing us to kind of ignore their new system and just like full send. Obviously, we'll need to like see actual data to like know if it's correct to like full charge or not in like every situation. But it seems like if you're not going to cap on essence, it's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think like specifically right now, Living Flame is probably doing a little too much damage. Is that correct?
I mean, if you empower Living Flame, like, through the fireside, it can be pretty wild. I was impressed with the damage it
Yeah.
dealt, whether you're taking, like, Engulfing Blaze or Ruby Embers, like, it can actually crank, and, like, Ever-Burning Flame with Burnout and things like that, like, there's a lot of synergy there. The fire build seems to be pretty simple, like, in single target, but it just pipes. It just cranks. Like, Flame
Yeah.
crushes.
Yeah, let's actually start with a fire build. So this is like the first thing I had an idea to do when I like went into Mythic Plus. I think there's definitely a huge Mythic Plus element of taking Eternity Surge and the Cleave Charge Blast. Like I was just like, I'm just gonna send full fire and see how it feels. So who's a fire lord who wants to take me down the fire road?
Kalamazi, do you want to do fire? I think you've played
I
it.
mean, sure. Like, are we level 70 or what are we doing here?
Yeah, of
Like,
course.
okay. All right. So I mean, obviously, like, we're grabbing fire off the bat. Bang, Ruby Essence burst. Right there. So like, there's this weird like middle ground where, and the preheat might be able to fill me in a bit here. Like, where when you get to the disintegrate talent, arcane intensity, like, I'm not sure. Like, I think at this point we're sort of at this weird point where, like, I'm not sure if spending pyre in single target is better than casting disintegrate in single target, even if you're playing like an empowered fire build.
Yeah.
Um,
So because Feed the Flames is bugged, that's you probably
Yeah.
use it right now. But once
Yeah,
it's unbugged, you probably don't.
when we're talking about these builds, I think the best thing to do is just assume that things are bugged until this next Tuesday are not, right? Like definitely and if things are like completely overtuned. Like I remember looking at a single target log yesterday of Trill doing I'll pull it up on my stream right now. This was just you doing single target on a dummy, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and Living Flame is 46% of your damage because he's not Azure striking for like in his Dragon Rage just for like the quick procs. He's just like slamming. Like that is right. Like that's no matter what that is bad. That can't be right. So some of this stuff will obviously change.
Oh, Trill, quick question
sure.
about that log. Were you trying to sack all your essence before you did fire breath so that you could just spam your living flame while you had like everything else coming back?
I would only just spam Living Flame until burnout ran out.
Okay.
And I also was only doing one Empower and Eternity Surges.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
again, down the fire thing again. Here we go. So
Yeah, so
volatility, obviously.
2 with volatility, yeah. 1 in dense energy, and you need like 3 points to move on from this anyways. So like, if we're skipping the arcane intensity part with disintegrate, I think you just go Azure Essence Blast and like double A waste, because that'll get you Essence Attunement at some point anyways when you can backtrack. So like, we unlock the next row now. Obviously, grabbing Dragon Rage, it's wild. Double Ruby Affinity off to the left. You can grab Animosity too while you're there. It's fine. You know, that's okay. And then like, so you've got at least on my screen, like I've got like 8 points left to spend. So I typically went like Imminent Destruction, the Empower, like reduced cast time, and it gets like this weird thing when you're on the far left of like Engulfing Blaze and Ruby Embers, and like I'm not actually sure what's better here. I feel like Engulfing Blaze is better if you're playing Everburning Flame because of like the Ruby Embers like 3 times. It's hard to say. Like I've actually played both. So I just ended up grabbing Engulfing Blaze as far as that's concerned. And then like if you're going like hard, like big AoE build, I mean, you Firestorm it up easily.
Yeah, so I think that's the issue. So Firestorm right now is like pretty ass, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like this is just a hard assumption that like especially seeing how this tree is built out, where like it's like fire to the left and then blue to the right, where
Mhm.
charge blast is like kind of like the opposite of firestorm in a way, even though you can have charge blast cleave and it's pretty strong.
Right.
In any AoE situation, Blizzard would have made an error if you do not select firestorm and snapfire. That's clearly what it is designed for. So
Yeah.
we're just going to assume in this fire build that firestorm is correctly tuned where it is not at the moment.
Mhm. I throw 1 point in Cascading Power, which is to the right of Firestorm, 1 in Quantum Magic. That's your 6 essences.
Got it.
And then what do we have left? 3.
You may want to get Essence Attunement up above.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Yeah, you grab Essence Attunement, which is off to the far right.
Yep, and then you have 2 more points.
Yep. Power Swell, obviously, 100%. And then you've got like the option of like Quell here, but I mean you've also got like Power Nexus, which is like your 6th essence, which is pretty big. So I'm just grabbing Power Nexus,
Okay.
and that should unlock the final row for you, right? Yeah,
It
there you
does.
go.
Yep.
The next one, cool. So Snapfire, obviously, because we're assuming Firestorm's like giga damage.
Yep.
And you get in the Feed the Flames, which is bugged, but it's pretty strong in an AoE based setting. This build, because like it's a super short fire breath time. Then it's like Heat Wave. Uh, Heat Wave's a weird one because like it's definitely worth it still, but it increases the dot duration of or the dot damage of Fire Blast or Fire Breath. It's not the actual like impact damage, or I guess like the explosion, but it's still worth it, I think. And then it sort of depends. Like I want to grab Ruin, obviously, and then how many points do you have left in your tree?
We have 5 total points. So you have the ability to get exactly Tyranny, Burnout, and Everburning if you wanted it, or I'm assuming you just want Tyranny, right? You're not Eternity Surging with this build, so it's a little bit less value, but you are
Yeah,
getting
I wouldn't.
getting
Right.
reduction on
Well,
fire.
it depends. Like, so you have 5 points left. You can go like, let's see. You can go, yeah, you can grab actually. You can grab all of them. Actually, yeah, you can go double Tyranny, double Burnout, and Everburning Flame. Right.
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
want to talk about Everburning. How do you guys feel about Everburning Flame?
It's it's weird. Like it can be good in like sustained AOE, but I feel like 9 times out of 10, you're probably not gonna get full value out of it. It gives you like a Fire Breath extension basically to your next Fire Breath without any kind of like Feed the Flames CDR mixed in. If you're like casting Living Flames and Pyres and stuff, it feels underwhelming to me though. I'm
You're
not sure what
gonna
their take is.
take Feed the Flames though, like assuming it
Yeah.
Oh, for
works
sure, for sure, for sure.
because
Yeah.
of Power Swell, you just have to take that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so I don't think an extension, especially as a capstone on that dot, matters literally
Yeah,
at all.
I would
Like,
like to see this reworked. It definitely
It's a
is
bit redundant.
extremely underwhelming capstone with Feed the
Yeah.
Flames existing. If you're already going down this side of the tree anyway. Tyranny is fucking great. I love the fact that it's in the middle of these two as well, because both builds can realistically use it. And also just as a straight up thing in Mythic Plus right now, if you wanted to in like an AoE situation, or you could tech out of Everburning Flame, assuming it isn't reworked, and you could also just grab Eternity Surge as well. Wouldn't be able to grab the capstone
Yeah.
with it, but like you could move around a few points and mess around with that. But let's just assume for now that this is reworked. This is like a full fire build. This is you basically never disintegrating, correct?
Yeah.
And
You
you're
didn't
just
even take
you're
anything.
yeah,
Yeah.
you just slam, and this build is very mobile in Mythic Plus, especially the ability to just slam pyres, like the fact that you don't have to channel disintegrate even outside of hover, like you are just constantly moving. It plays and flows really well. I think the only thing that feels kind of bad about this is the cast of Firestorm when it's not proc, that kind of feels like it's a little slow. What do you
Yeah.
guys think? Have you guys played the full fire build in dungeons at all?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I just want to talk about something really quick. So Snapfire, that buff is extremely easy to munch unless you cast Living Flame into another spell every time. And it's kind of frustrating whenever they add these kind of buffs that don't stack twice, and you have like a cast that you spam to proc it, because almost every single time you're going to proc it, you're going to cast another Living Flame before you use
Wait, when
it.
you
right?
cast a Living Flame again after... Oh, you mean it's really likely to munch because you're not going to cancel your Living Flame? Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Like, so if you're casting 2 Living Flames in a row, right, you get done with the first cast, you queue up the second one, it's like halfway through, and then it procs, right? So at that point, if you were to proc a second one, it would munch in that situation. So pretty much it forces you to like play this style where you Living Flame into Pyre, Living Flame into Firestorm, Living Flame into just any other spell. You're always alternating so that you can always get the effectiveness on that buff. And it really, really feels good if you like do a Living Flame into Firestorm, and it procs because you just like unleash like a giga Firestorm. But I don't like the design of this because, you know, once again, if you're having like a spell that you're spamming, I think it should stack at least twice because almost every player using this, unless they like are aware of this, is gonna munch procs like crazy.
Sure. And this is also something that I think is a little bit of point of criticism for the class. That I really like the way that even in a blue build, you are, you know, you're using Living Flame on single target, but then you're also using Azure Strike to prop up your Charge Blast. And I think it's always a consideration to Azure Strike in your Dragon Rage to get more procs. And I like the fact that you have two spenders, and depending on your build, you might actually use both of them in a different scenario. I think that's like really, really cool instead of
It's
just
super
having it
cool.
have to be binary. I think that's like one of the coolest parts of the spec, and I hope they lean into that. I think it's like for example, in this build, I actually really like playstyles way more where you don't living flame during Dragon Rage. I would actually like just prefer it for during Dragon Rage. Not only is it a really strong cooldown, but it's also mostly fully mobile, meaning that it's like always worth it to Azure Strike because your spenders are so much better than they are. With currently living flame as strong as it is, you're just going to living flame anyway and you get less procs, so it doesn't feel as good, and then you're also less mobile. That doesn't seem quite right.
You
Another
can use
thing,
like an Azure Strike to bank a couple Essence Burst procs coming out of like Dragon Rage too. But the two cast styles feel very different. Like it feels bad casting Living Flames during Dragon's Rage. At least to me it does when you can just be
Really
spamming
bad. No,
Azure Strike. Yeah.
absolutely. Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
but that being said though, like especially if you're taking Engulfing Blaze and you're playing like what we're talking about, where you like you drag you flame breath, sorry, into a bunch of like living flame spam with burnout, that seems to be kind of like the engine for this build's like single target, right? But yeah, it's weird because you're like ignoring your essence, you're ignoring your clear casting, you're just like letting it rip with as
Mhm.
many living flame classes as you can.
Okay. So now looking at this as just like a pure red, before we move to like a pure blue or like a more single targety based build, with some of the like capstone on the right and charge blast, how would you guys modify this if you wanted to incorporate spells like Eternity Surge or adding a lower cooldown kick when necessary? Probably in some. That's one thing I found weird about this tree is that you definitely kind of don't want to take your lower cooldown kick ever, and I think they might want to make it a little easier to get as a TPS. So something to think about. What would you guys do to uh, like, do you guys think it would ever be worth in this build to grab anything over here that you don't currently have?
I think Eternity Surge is insane, and I'd like to grab it in any situation where I can. That ability, like I feel like even just casting it like at level 1 seems to do like pretty good boss damage. But in any situation where there's like ads that are going to come out, which is pretty much like every raid encounter that isn't just strictly single target, Eternity Surge is basically like a way to just like instantly clap any ads that come out. The damage is just insane.
Yeah, it's super good target swapping ability.
And you
That's
don't
for
even have
sure.
to target swap. That's the best part. You just hit the boss with it and it just eats all the ads.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like when a new mob spawns and it needs to die, it's just
Mhm.
like always ready. You can even like pre-charge it. Um, but you can't really grab the choice node with it here. Like, what are the options here, even in a fire build, or is there really in a fire build the option to grab the button for Eternity Surge, or do you just take it natty?
I mean, I think
Uh
if you it depends on the fire build. Like, if you shift out of
yeah.
like Firestorm Snapfire, you can grab it,
Yeah, that's what I
which
was gonna say too.
is like probably the play at this point because of how bad they are. But if you're assuming fire is good, then I mean it's a weird like middle ground.
You probably spec out of those two and grab the increased Eternity Surge and the node, right?
Yeah, I mean, you sort of could like just leave those if you like got rid of Everburning Flame and Burnout. You grab both Azure Affinity and Eternity Surge, but then you're like in some weird like I have like one end tier like capstone kind of talent, and it seems almost a bit too hybrid to me. If that makes sense,
Um the
right?
the cascading power talent that's directly below like the choice for engulfing blaze and the other one, I think that one's bad. I don't think that's it's the one that looks
Right?
like a circle with like red and blue, 10% on the left.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, this,
I mean,
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. That one seems bad to me. And I don't like it. And I don't think I'd
I
take
mean,
it in pretty much any
sure.
situation.
Yeah, it could be good on AoE, but I also don't value the cooldown reduction on Tourney Search very highly, I think. Yeah, especially because of how strong Living Flame is, but I
Oh,
just don't think that like you're casting enough essence abilities unless you're in Dragon Rage to really
Yeah,
get the most
definitely.
value
And
out of
then
it.
also because it works on any crits, right? So if you're hitting 8 targets with this, for example, you could go into it and just immediately get 2 procs always from Continuum, or very likely. Um, okay, that's something to think about. Let's do a blue build now. Full blue with just like the other things. Who wants to do this one? I guess Kalamazi did the fire, but obviously everyone can contribute to it.
Yeah, I'll
This is
walk us through the blue build if you want.
sure.
So, yeah, I mean, like we were saying before, it seems like a lot of red stuff is like pretty good, but maybe not quite there. The blue build though, it kind of, I mean, we're overlapping a lot, right? So let's just start with the like just going down the tree here. Obviously, you're gonna want both of the clear casts at the top, right? And then Disintegrate's gonna be a big source of damage, so you're definitely gonna want to pick that one up as well. And then let me just look at your screen here. Oh yeah, we definitely want Essence Attunement. I think that's one you pretty much always take. At this point, we kind of have a choice. I think Deep Breath is a pretty good option here, but it kind of just depends.
I think deep breath is the play unless it's like you're mostly blue for single target, but then there's just like this moment when a bunch of ads spawn where like throwing those 2 points into volatility could be like just dumping into it, or dense energy could be a consideration. But I think that like I mean, I guess the idea right here is just to think pure single, right?
Yeah. And
okay.
So moving on from there, we should unlock the next row. Yeah, so obviously we take Dragon Rage. That's essential talent. We're going to immediately spec into Power Swell, because that one is just, that one also seems like a staple to me. Same with Power Nexus, the one below it. And then obviously we're going to want to get Azure Affinity, because that's blue damage. That's what we're focusing on. Eternity Surge, for sure. That ability just pipes. And then definitely Charge Blast as well. I think Charge Blast is really, really good, especially.
What do you think about the node under Eternity Surge?
So I think at the start of the expansion, Causality is going to be the one to go with, because it, we'll probably have like less crit at the start. But I think as we get more gear, there's definitely going to be like a point where you're going to want to swap it maybe. Basically the argument for Causality in all cases is that more cooldown reduction on Eternity Surge means more uptime on Power Swell, and more uptime on Power Swell means more Disintegrate. Right, so I feel like that is probably a lock-in, but obviously if you had a lot of crit, it could change.
Okay, so now we have Charge Blast, Causality, and Power Nexus. We need 3 more points to unlock the bottom part of the tree.
Yeah, so we're definitely going to get Imminent Destruction. That's got heavy synergy with Power Swell and all the others we were talking about. The same with Font of Magic. Font of Magic is a lock-in as well.
Okay.
And then for our last trait, I think blue actually has the freedom to spec into the Imposing Presence, the Quell cooldown. Because everything else above it is like, maybe if you wanted a little bit more AoE focus, you could also get like the Pyre one, but yeah, I would probably go with the Quell. And then from that point on, we're definitely want something below Charge Blast. For Cleave, you're going to want Expansive Maw. And then I don't really like how it plays, but the other one seems like it'd probably be better in single target.
I mean, certainly. But I guess Charge Blast just does 10% more damage. It feels bad if it procs 2 times in a row.
It feels really bad. Yeah, because you're like, what am I supposed to do with this?
Yeah, but it feels really good when it procs once. Well, I would agree that. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say there's another reason though, and we'll get to it like once we get a little down the tree. But I think it's just, yeah, I think that there's like a design problem with how they kind of built this.
What do you mean it feels bad when it procs twice? Are you talking like you can't Disintegrate double Azure Strike
So
again into it?
No, it's that you lose the buff from Azure Striking twice for the increased damage of Charge Blast. You Azure Strike, Charge Blast, and then if you get a proc, you can Charge Blast again, which is good. But then by the time you get off GCD again, even if you have enough orbs to use it, you lose the thing from Azure Strike, and then you have to press that button again to prop it up. Feels weird. And it's anti-synergistic with Scintillation too.
Yeah. So have we unlocked the next row yet? Oh, okay. Yeah, we're still good. Yep. Yeah, so Azure Strike, obviously 2 points into that bad boy, because we're going to want to split up. I think if you're going to do any sort of cleave, like even 2-target cleave, you'd probably take the one on the right, Eternity Span. That one has like a weird...
I agree with that. I was going to say, isn't it... So how much are you actually Azure Striking as a blue build? Are you Living Flaming permanently outside of or inside of Dragon Rage? Like,
So
do you Azure Strike just to buff your Charge Blast and that's it?
So in my testing, it seems like Azure Strike right now for blue build, like if you're going the blue build I've been testing with, it seems like it was about DPS neutral to just like never cast Living Flame and just like only Azure Strike.
Damn. Okay. That
Um,
seems weird, but I would actually like it to be where you Living Flame outside of Dragon Rage and you Living Flame outside of buffing up your Charge Blast, and then you Azure Strike during your cooldown to make it full mobile, and you obviously do it for the Charge Blast integration. I think that's fun.
yeah,
But I think ignoring Living Flame entirely on the blue build is kind of lame. I like the idea that you bounce between the two spenders or the generators.
yeah. And then next is Focusing Iris. And this is the part I was going to talk about that kind of ties into why I think that trait for Charge Blast is bad. Because as this build with Focusing Iris, you can pretty much always have 10% damage up on the target for every big damage event. And if you get done with the Disintegrate and then you Azure Strike twice into a Charge Blast and it procs, that second one's not going to get it unless you have like Extreme Haste. So that's another reason why I think that that talent kind of is at odds with what seems to be the right gameplay.
Okay.
But anyways, moving on from there, Scintillation is just way too good for single target. You're definitely taking that no matter what. And then obviously you have some extra points here. So this is where we can make some decisions.
Well, ruins like you have to have ruin.
Yeah,
right?
I would say Ruin is definitely there. Tyranny also very, very strong, but I want to give some options because there are situations where maybe it's like 2-target cleave. And I think you would, in any situation where it's 2-target, you're going to pick Eternity Span because if you have Scintillation, it affects the Eternity Surge level 1 and it makes it hit 2 targets every time. So it's like a Giga Splitting Ice.
Are you sure that single talent would be worth more than just empowering it twice?
No, I'm saying
it
the one that procs from Scintillation, the free one, becomes a
I
2-target
see.
cleave.
I do see what you're saying. Okay, that is actually a very big deal. Okay, I see what you mean. That's actually really fucking sick.
Yeah, it's like Splitting Ice, but like completely cracked out. And whenever it procs, you just see like 60k damage go out. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, like when I was like doing like testing on dummies, like using Warcraft logs, like the variance between some polls when like you had like good Eternity Surge Scintillation RNG was like actually pretty wild.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
But anyway, so like that one seems like a pretty heavy contender for me. But if you're going like pure single target, I guess you'd probably stick with Ruin, max out Tyranny. You know,
well, you can do all of that, right? So you can Ruin, max out Tyranny, and grab Eternity Span.
Yes, you can. There was something else I wanted though. Oh, do we have to drop the interrupt for that, or are
No,
we
you
still good with
shouldn't have
that?
to, no. You can
Nope.
grab. There should be 1 point left. You can grab like Dense Magic maybe, like at the top.
Yeah,
possibly,
let's scroll up. Can you scroll up a little on your screen, Max?
Yeah, I'll take the points out of Tyranny and Ruin.
I think this is good. I'm pretty sure this is the sauce. Yeah, back to Ruin and Tyranny, I think.
Then you can just take that every single time, and then in a pure single target scenario, you could one point into Heat Wave, I guess.
Yeah, I think I just remembered why. So it's on my character. I can't take it. That's what I was misremembering. But Max level, you'll be able to take it. Yeah. Yeah. So this build is fantastic. You've got like so many little short cooldowns that do a lot of damage, and you've pretty much got every ability that synergizes with fully empowering. I don't know if you always fully empower, but I think the rule is just from like playing it, it feels like if you're gonna not cap on essence, you probably fully charge every time. And that feels really weird for Eternity Surge, but at least you have like the Tip to Scales talent, so you can kind of keep that in your hand for whenever cooldowns are coming up, because if you're in Dragon Rage and you're fully charging like an Eternity Span, that's going to feel really bad. You're going to feel stupid for doing that, unless it's like big AoE, you know?
Yeah. So I just think Eternity Surge should change. Like I don't know. Like I actually really think it's cool that like Scintillation with Eternity Span like does that 2-target cleave thing. But I think Eternity Surge in general just being so I think the reason they did this is like if you look at the preservation tree, for example, like something that makes sense for healing is like a way to charge this up is it heals extra allies, right? But like I feel like that doesn't really translate well to DPS. Like having to hold something longer to make it AoE, it absolutely does not feel good. And the fact that you're saying that you would actually empower this to 4 even in single target, that is fucking stupid. Like that
Yeah.
that is bad. That would feel horrific.
And
But I
just
think
Oh, sorry.
ahead.
Just to expand on that, though, I'm not sure of that. That just, it feels that way, but assuming that you're not going to cap your essence, and obviously not in cooldowns or anything like that.
I just think this brings us to a much broader topic of just empowering in general. I feel like it's flawed.
Yeah.
And it doesn't play the way it should. It's this new thing in the game that does not feel awesome at all. It feels slow, not being able to like I don't think it needs all of these things, but it absolutely needs a few of can cast during hover, is shorter, does scale with haste, and then in general, I think that they can be way more interesting than this.
Yeah, the biggest gripe for me is that hover doesn't let you empower. I feel like hover should, and that would fix a lot of what I don't like about it. I also don't like that, like, if you press the button and then you let it up, for some reason, even though it shows on the UI you can use it again, you have to wait like almost like a global cooldown in order to like use it again. So it's like this huge punishment if you're just like, everyone who plays WoW probably is used to like spamming a cooldown as it's about to come up, right? Like you kind of build that muscle memory. And empowering kind of goes exactly opposite of that, right? Because if you do that, you're just going to waste the global basically every single time.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of it. And I think that with their, like, anytime you have talents where it's like based on empowerment level or it makes you empower more, like you're just heavily incentivizing just full sending everything, right? And that's just like, what's the point then of having empowered abilities if you're just full sending them? So it seems like an easy fix would be just to make power swell a baseline duration and not have it be based off empowerment level. And that would like heavily move away some of the incentivization. And then maybe Tyranny is like the one where you just full send and that's a capstone. So it's fine, right? It's fine. The capstone affects your gameplay that way.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I definitely see that. What do you so this is like kind of more broad about the class. Unless Trill or Goop, do you guys have any hybrid builds you guys think are cool and want to build and you think could be powerful that are different from the generic full red or full blue?
Not personally. I mean, I think there's more room to like experiment with that when all the talents are working correctly. I think there could be something there with a hybrid build with the flame breath cooldown. Because I really like these points in blue on the right, specifically. What's this ability? Charge blast. Not so much on single target, but like as you add a couple more targets, I think blue feels insane. But it's also like really, it's kind of BM hunter spammy. Like the only time you ever have to stop is to channel one of these empowered abilities, and otherwise you're just actually instant cast everything, spitting on the move. You
Yeah, outside of
don't have a care in
empowers.
the world.
Yeah, outside of empowers, it's actually insane how mobile they are. As blue, you just don't do shit.
I have a feeling that it was made that way because of the 25-yard range. Like that's going to be a big
Yeah.
limiting factor
Definitely.
in how you play. So like having that freedom of movement's really good.
I get so in the log that you brought up earlier, I was actually kind of playing like a hybrid build. Like I went,
You
I
want to
went,
build that? Here.
I went fire down to engulfing blaze, which is the living flame damage increase and also cast time increase.
Okay.
Um, and I also went pretty deep into blue as well. I went all the way down to scintillation at the very bottom.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yep. So I would take that, and then on the left, Font of Magic, Heat Wave, Burnout. I did try playing Everburning Flame, but I don't think I cast enough Living Flames for that to really matter. Since I only casted Living Flame like for like mostly the first 8 seconds after Fire Breath. So I think taking that point out and putting it in Ruin instead is probably better. But
Okay.
since I was only empowering Eternity Surge once on single target, I don't think Tyranny was that great. And
Oh, this is interesting. Okay, I'm trying to where am I missing points here? Is this correct on the well, this is single target, so it wouldn't be volatility, it would be like
well, I picked volatility anyway because there's unless you I don't think like do you even press like deep breath on one target like
I don't think you do, honestly. Like it's close. It seems pretty bad in single target. But I could be wrong.
I'm pretty sure you do, especially with Tyranny, especially if you have Focusing Iris, because if you like prime it with the 10%, I don't know, whenever I was looking at it, like the damage per execute time, obviously like it depends on how far you go, right? Because if you go further, it takes longer. But
yeah
I think if you like short shorten the range on it. Oh, speaking of, it's really weird that there's like a minimum range, I feel like, especially since you have only 25 yards. You're like in this
That's true, though.
small window where like the only spot where you can like deep breath and also damage the mobs is like, it just feels ridiculous to try and find that sweet spot all the time.
I think that's worth bringing up and highlighting. Like, there should be like, I get like the minimum range is probably like what, like 7 yards or something now. There's been plenty of times where I want to deep breath, I kind of target right in front of me, but I just can't. Like, there's an object behind it. Pathing's an issue in the first place with
Yeah.
like at cursor macros with it, but it feels like like the minimum range should be a lot less. Whether it's like a limitation with like how the spell's designed or something, but there's been plenty of times
Probably.
where I want to, but I just can't. And it's really
Uh,
awkward.
I
Trill,
actually
where did you?
stopped. I stopped at Eternity Surge. I did not go into Charge Blast.
Oh,
And I
interesting.
went on the back on the left. I went Font of Magic, Heat Wave, Burnout. But also on the right, I went into Power Nexus, Eternity's Span, Focusing Arrows, Scintillation.
Yeah. So this,
And since I wasn't casting Azure Strike, so I didn't take that one at all.
How did you get down to? Did you grab Eternity Span?
I got Eternity's
Just
Span
for less
instead.
points? Oh yeah. Okay, and then you grab the extra point and burnout. So this is just like you doing like after your fire breath, you're just a machine gun living
You
flamer.
just spam Living Flame till the buff runs out, and then I would one empower Eternity Surge, and then just disintegrate until I'm out of essence, and I would just continue to spam Living Flame until I had more essence to disintegrate again.
And that was the log that you linked, which is
Mhm.
this. Just 1 point eternity surging, and then it's just 4 spells.
yeah.
Yeah.
I want to.
It just looks crazy.
So I want to say something about this hybrid build. I think it's really overpowered that you can both have scintillation and the other talents that buff up disintegration while also having burnout. Burnout seems to be kind of the driver for single target red damage, and obviously disintegration is a big part of the single target on the blue side. Having both of those feels really good, and it almost feels like you want to like wait on your fire breath until you basically like have nothing else going on, and it just gives you like another cooldown to hold you over.
Yeah, it feels like demonic in a way, demon hunter, where like you fire breath, and then normally where it would be kind of boring, it's like, oh, you're in meta for 6 seconds. Oh, you can just spam the fuck out of fire breath, and you have a decent amount of cooldowns coming out or damage coming out.
I
I
think
think you can easily move a point out of Burnout into like Feed the Flames for AoE as well. If you need to spam Fire and Fire Breath, like, because I think it's still like a really strong.
Yeah, that's the only real issue I have with this build is the fact that you have the pyre essence cost reduction on a spell where you're literally never casting pyre instead of
Yeah, I mean,
except come out or
well,
yeah.
you would press it on AoE, right? Just in pure single target, like, yeah, so you wouldn't.
And with that build, you weren't even like Azure striking before your charge blast. It was just like
I
pure
wasn't.
living.
I didn't play Charge Blast.
He didn't play Charge Blast. Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
That's
it didn't
spicy.
even feel worth pressing, to be honest.
That's actually really cool.
Yeah, I
Cool.
think Charge Blast, unless you're picking up the Cleave talent on it, to me, I feel like you want it in Cleave, and that's pretty much it.
That's
Yeah, but
spicy.
how often do you not have some kind of cleave to do?
Exactly.
in the game?
Yeah. It feels like you always have some sort
I
of.
feel like you could play this Living Flame build on like a Skolex type boss, but then most other bosses in the game, you're gonna want to go into Charge Blast and then Azure Strike damage and Expansive Maw. And
Dude,
all that stuff.
I think like blue I really like both builds. I think like blue build being so mobile and being able to mobile in the way that you're like Azure striking a lot, and the fact that you can get like multiple target cleave with Charge Blast. Like, dude, on 3 target cleave, Charge Blast is going to crank, like actually do so much damage. And then fire build gets its mobility in a different way from piring, right? You can just kind of like run around and pyre. I think they both feel distinctly different, and they're both good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're almost like opposites because whenever you're building with blue or like building quote unquote, you're really mobile. And then whenever you spin, you have to kind of stand still or hover. But with red, it's literally the opposite, right? Like while you're just cranking living flames, you're standing still, and otherwise you're just running around lobbing meatballs.
What do you guys think are so obviously very positive about the talent tree? What are some nodes that seem maybe in a weird spot or are decisions you really don't want to make?
So I think that Ever Burning Flame is just weird, but I do think that it might feel good to take in like some sort of weird hybrid AoE situations where you're wanting to keep like your dot up on a bunch of enemies. But I think that that one's it feels out of the way just because burnout's 2 points, right? Also, like the honed aggression, I always want to take honed aggression, but it feels a little tight there with that as well. The start of this tree is just weird, right? I think we kind of already talked about this, but like having to essentially put that point into Pyre, it just that feels weird for a lot of situations where you wouldn't really use it that much. Um, and then like everything on the far right side with like Firestorm and Snapfire. I don't know. I feel like you have to go like so deep into there. I wish Firestorm was a little bit higher up.
Yeah, that was something I was thinking of
Mm.
too, where I feel like having to hard commit into Firestorm and Charge Blast, I think they didn't want you to have that many buttons. Like, I don't think they ever want you to play both Firestorm and Charge Blast by the way they put them at the tree. Um, I definitely think Honed Aggression being down here feels off. Because it's like
It does.
Eternity Surge is twice as many target, powerful. Fire Breath damage over time, especially combined with this, very powerful. Feed the Flames, very powerful. And then it's just like Azure Strike damage, which is supposed to be like deep in the blue tree. I think this node is supposed to exist for the sole reason of you press Azure Strike instead of Living Flame on single target. I think that's kind of the point of this and
It
why it's in like the blue side of the tree or what its intention is. I don't know if it necessarily does that, but like that's kind of what the point is. So it need to be kind of more deeply ingrained in the blue side.
So for blue AoE, like a lot of your damage, in fact, I think your number one DPS is Azure Strike. And basically that talent, like if you're doing any form of AoE, it's just if you don't have it, you're just lost. But the expanding on that though, like for blue, you basically get all your AoE for free while doing single target, which is pretty sick.
Yep.
Like, and I like that a lot. It feels like you're just this boss free cleave master, kind of like how Mage used to be. And that's sick. And Red honestly kind of has the same thing going on, right? Like, especially if you're using Pyre. So it,
It,
yeah, it just
I mean,
feels really good with the
it
cleave.
does. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. Sorry.
No, go ahead. I'm done.
It does. It just feels like if you're committing to like Firestorm, Snapfire, like if they're tuned properly, it's just like I don't feel like they compare equally to like Charge Blast and going into like either Arcane Reverb or Expansive Maw, right? Because like you can make a case for both Arcane Reverb and Maw being like sort of single target esque, but they definitely offer more of a single target value compared to like Firestorm and Snapfire. Like unless they just buff the shit out of Firestorm and Snapfire, right?
Mhm.
It's just sort of odd. But yeah, blue has like just that. Like if you're fully spec'd into it, your Azure Strike hits 6 mobs. Your Eternity Surge hits 8 mobs. You can just pyre things if you want, and your something else cleaves too. Fire Breath cleaves. The whole spec just cleaves, right? While also doing good prio damage. But if you're going into like Firestorm, Snapfire stuff, it's a bit awkward for fire. At least I feel like it's still solid and it's fun to play, but I feel like there's a bit of a disconnect there if they're trying to go along that line of like you can have either Firestorm or Charge Blast, but not both. And he brought up like the Everburning Flame thing as well. It is a bit odd having both Everburning Flame and like Feed the Flames because, like you said, the duration extension is nice, but I think chances are pretty high you're grabbing Feed the Flames, and then if you're grabbing Everburning, it's almost a bit like redundant.
No, it's
You know what I
definitely
mean?
redundant.
Yeah, it
It's
just seems
absolutely
like
redundant.
yeah,
I actually think the biggest problem on the tree is the kick.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
it's so hard to
a
get the kick,
CDR.
especially as Red.
so
Or,
the only reason that they put
uh,
this in this tree at all is because they want to get Quell in the class tree, and they don't want the healer to have a 20-second cooldown. They're like, okay, healer having 40-second cooldown, all good, that's fine. Like DPS has a 20, but they put the 20 like in the middle of. They definitely intentionally put it in the middle of both, so it was easily able to be grabbed by both
Yeah.
builds. But you have to like make the choice to have like a DPS. It's obviously I think this cooldown's uh length of 20 seconds for a DPS invoker is intentionally in between a average ranged cooldown of kick and a melee cooldown of kick. Because it's like a mid-range class. Like that's kind of the point. I think they did that with their interrupt cooldown as well. I would rather see this be baseline. I just think if you are a DPS evoker, your cooldown should be a 20-second kick, just straight up. I can even say that over here in the class tree. And I would like to see a much more interesting node tying together the red and blue in the middle. Because right now, I think this class, even though both builds play pretty well, I think it is a little bit one dimensional. And I think they could add a really, really cool thing here to especially allow you to like very much easily are much more easily cross into the other side of the tree's capstone nodes based on their power level. Where right now you have to like grab a no damage ability to like do that, or you have to grab a Zure Strike. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't really feel good. So I would definitely like to see this moved, able to be got for free, right? Like I mean, something you could do for sure is just make Pyre baseline, which also gives healer evokers a a damaging ability for AoE, right?
Mhm.
And then you can just put this in that spot, right? And then Pyre's baseline, that's here, and then it kind of solves that. And then you can put something more interesting there.
Yeah, I'm surprised there aren't any talents that like make it so that if you spin like a red spinner, it affects a blue spinner in some way, or like vice
Yep,
versa.
yep.
It seems
That
like
needs to
that
exist.
would be like a no-brainer for like a middle talent, like imposing presence. So,
Literally, you could have a 1 point talent in the middle of the tree that just makes your spec instead of red or blue purple. And by using red spells, you are empowering blue spells, and it's all about the weaving between the two. I think that would be
That'd be really
fucking
cool,
that
actually.
would be fucking awesome. And it's like
Yeah.
this class is begging for it.
yeah, it seems like a missed opportunity a little bit. There's another hybrid build that's very similar to kind of what you're looking at right now. But essentially the difference is that you would pick Everburning Flame for like AoE, and it's doing like a lot of AoE damage. There's and like in that build, right? Like you'd be casting the red spells, you'd be casting the blue spells, you're pyring, you're using like Charge Blast as a blue spinner. I feel like it would be right at home with that kind of playstyle.
Okay.
I can see that. Yeah.
All right, cool. So this is I think we're at a good spot. I just want to know if you guys have any final takes about Evoker as they stand currently with DPS Evoker specifically, like where potentially they'll be in the meta, what they'll be good at or better at compared to other classes. Do they do something that, like no other class currently does? We've already talked a bit about like empowering and stuff. Just kind of general thoughts.
Uh, I'm a little concerned about the 25-yard range thing in a raid because, like, is this class gonna fully be able to get targeted by ranged mechanics, but then you just can't ever be with the ranged camp?
Yeah.
I feel like it's gonna be really difficult if that's the case to like on bosses where ranged have to bait stuff. Like, how do you bring this
So
class?
there's like two different ways it could go, right? Like they could code it so that you're basically like a Mistweaver or like a Holy Paladin. So you
That would be
basically
so
are like
fucking
counted
broken.
as a melee. Yeah, so that seems really probably not going to happen because it seems too good. But
Well,
yeah,
it's
I mean
broken
like
either way.
imagine
It's either broken in a good way where they can't get
or
targeted, or in a
I
bad
think
way
yeah,
where
yeah.
you can't bring them because they literally will fuck over the entire raid.
Yeah, imagine
I
you're like
think
doing jailer and it's like where how can you ever be with any of the range, you know? Like you're going to be in melee
Mm.
pretty much.
Yeah, you wouldn't be considered for a range job like that. I wouldn't be able to flex to that role most likely. But also, I think that the reason that this class's mobility is so fucking unbelievable is because of that. Like the reason that hover exists is because you guys are not a 40-yard range class.
Mhm.
But I think I do agree that that is going to feel bad. Like, just imagine you have like a melee camp and a rage camp, and the range have to like bait sleep puddles away on Lords of Dread, and then like you have to like hover out of range of the boss and then come back real quick just to bait correctly. Like it's definitely like the way that raid encounters work. It's definitely going to be very weird. And the alternative of just making them a melee healer or a melee for selection of certain spells is definitely a situation where there's no way they would have this much movement if they didn't have to ever do any mechanics, right? So uh, they are definitely in kind of a spot there.
I mean, even just like speaking as a mage with 40 yards, I'm always annoyed whenever their range stack is like all boomkin and hunters, and they're just out of range of the boss. And it happens all the time whenever you're raiding, and you're like, "Hey guys, can you scooch forward a bit?" And that's kind of the situation I feel like you'll just permanently be in as Evoker.
Oh, dude, someone in my chat just had a fucking crane brain idea. What if they
Wait,
made
hold on. What
what if
is a
they made
crane brain?
hover increase your range to 40 yards during its
Well,
duration?
I thought about that, but
That's good.
isn't hover already too strong and like up too
It's
often?
If
getting
Would
they
they
do
annoying.
have to
that,
nerf
Yeah,
hover to
yeah.
compensate?
Of course, it's super busted, but I mean, you wouldn't have 100% uptime of being at 40 yards. But exactly the scenario we were just talking about gets solved by having that exactly,
yeah, and you're
I
definitely
mean,
right?
taking time
And you
spiral
and
if
you would
that's the
have
case.
to make sure to hover back within range by the time it was over. I actually
good,
really
yeah.
like that idea.
You can make the second charge talent just a 40-yard talent instead for hover. Yeah.
Very, very true. And then, like what someone said in chat about just give them 40-yard range. What's the problem? I'm pretty sure if they did, they would have to nerf their mobility a bit.
Yeah,
But that's
also
okay.
they can't just use mostly instant cast. I mean, unless they want to be like a BM hunter, but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, they also have like complete instacast ability. Like BM Hunter is definitely a relic, and it's also a spec of a triple DPS class. It's not an entire class's DPS identity. Yeah, that would kind of be an issue.
I mean, for stuff that you have to snap bait, it's actually probably not too bad because you have rescue, and then you have hover. Like you can pound into tailwind, the move speed on hover for the first 4 seconds. Worst case scenario, you can just like you can rescue out to the range camp, and then you can just use fly by me and fuck some guy over, so you can get back into range.
Something
got
you
a
can
lot
do
of
with Fly by Me as well. If you can like target certain guardians in the raid, so like totems or bloodworms or someone's like wild spirits, or not wild spirits, like their like other pet or something, and you can cast Fly by Me
What?
with them as the target. It won't pick them up, and then Fly by Me functionally just acts like a heroic leap.
Yeah, you
Oh,
could
that'll be
also
next week.
also
Oh,
if you're within 30 yards of a melee, you can also just like cast it on them, and it won't really do anything to them, and you just fly directly to them.
True, they'll probably be mad, but
Yeah, they will.
But yeah, you could do that for sure. Like even like as a scenario where like you're doing this baiting thing, Fly with me also just solves that problem as well. Like just imagine you're on Lords of Dread. The ranged are in the back left corner baiting asleep, and right after that is the swarm after the sleep gets baited. And you are in the middle of melee and ranged. You just fly by me to a range right as the bait is going out. So you are properly baiting at the edge of the room, and then you fly you and that ranged into melee to like get ready for the swarm, right? Like there's you do have just an absolutely absurd amount of movement abilities for this exact reason. I definitely think we're gonna have raid testing and a lot of dungeons to kind of really get in like you're gonna have to get in and actually play it to really feel how bad or not bad it is.
Yeah, I think it's also going to heavily depend on like obviously the boss design, because there could just be half of the bosses where it's not even really an issue. It's probably just going to be like 1 or 2 bosses every tier that feel really bad.
Yeah. Okay, I think that's it. I think we're good. I think the class definitely has a ton of potential. I think like the worst case scenario is that it's sometimes the specs don't like there's not like a ton of like micromanaging or a lot of interaction with the spec. Like I think especially fire is like turbo brain dead, but I mean that's fine that like one of your specs is brain dead. That is my biggest bit though. I definitely think Quell should be passive, and I think some kind of purple build could be really fun and like just a really really good idea. Okay, so thank you guys for coming on. That was excellent. We'll probably do the same thing with other classes where if they make any major changes, we'll probably have like 30 to 45-minute very focused discussions on exactly that, but nothing this long again in the future. So I'll leave the Discord group open.
Cool.
Yeah, I appreciate the invite. We got the Warlock trees coming up next week too, right? So
I think the warlock trees are a bit away.
we're way away.
Yeah,
but-
I think mage is definitely going to come before the warlock since they leaked most of it. There are other
Yeah,
classes as well.
So what I know of the classes that are currently waiting on coming out is like I know the guy who made the rogue trees, which are like have been done and are also very well made. He's also making the demon hunter tree currently. So that means that his job was probably do rogue tree and hunter tree. It was not do them both at the same time. So some specs that have very little stuff on them right now might be because literally no one has started working on them until recently. So I think some of them might come out like 3 or 4 weeks from now. I think my guess is that we're going to get 1 to 2 classes per week for the next 3 to 4 weeks, and then they'll all be out. And I'm to be honest, I actually think that's really good. Like even if they had the chance to release a bunch of them that were mostly finished on Tuesday, I feel like feedback would be much harder to give them. I feel like when it's like 1 to 2 classes a week, it's much easier to like really focus on those and get the feedback across than it would be if it was like kind of overwhelming with a lot of information at once.
For
So
sure. I
actually,
think staggering now is the best way to do it for sure.
yeah, definitely. All right, thanks for talking, guys.
Yeah, it was a good
thanks
talk.
again.
See you guys
Have a
later.
good one.
Bye-bye.
See ya.
All right, that is it. We're done with our Evoker talk for today. So, yeah, how do you guys feel about Evoker? I mean, we just talked about it for a good while, but I don't know about you. I'm very excited for this class. It seems to be awesome. Can't wait to see it. You're just so good at cleave. You're just a instant cast little cleave goblin. All your cleave seems to be free. You can absolutely clap any mobs that are coming out like before anyone else can even really react, because you can like precast your giant AoE abilities. And you have so much utility as well. So to me, this is going to be like a very easy pick for an alt. But I'm curious to see what y'all think. Did y'all talk about healing? No, Shanks, you need to watch Max's VOD before that part if you want to see the healing. The abilities look really fun to hit for the most part. Yeah, they are. You can just like forget that you're playing for like 5 minutes and just keep hitting the target dummies. At least I can. I reserved the name Evoke Me Daddy. Yeah, that's a good one. I think they should let Evoker chain 30 people grab. I agree. I agree with that. That would be sick. We did have some fun memes with that using like cancel auras. It was a pretty good time. But that's going to be it for today, y'all. Appreciate y'all watching. Hopefully you enjoyed watching our dungeons. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the conversation that we just had, and I'm going to put it over the gameplay that I did for the dungeons. And I'm going to upload it to YouTube. So if you want to see like dungeons as Evoker while you listen to people talk about Evoker, then that's going to be like a perfect combination for you. And yeah, we'll just kind of play it by ear from here on out. I think I'm probably going to be making a lot more mage content in the next couple days, hopefully, if they come out with more information, especially like the talents and their actual trees that they belong on. But other than that, though, thank you all for watching. It's been great. I had a really good stream today. Hope you guys enjoyed it. And we'll see you in the next one. I'm going to go ahead and spend some time hanging out, not playing World of Warcraft for the rest of the day. So peace out, guys. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Nice turtle. Nice turtle. Big MC.
I need to use movement. Sorry.
I need
All
to scale
good,
my
dude.
gear up.
Yeah, my IM level is kind of crazy because that seems really good.